time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective in life. Doubters all the night, and onto them you shine bright. Cause inside your head, on goes the light. Ignite, fight for intuition upon the stars in the night that glisten. To you they listen, to be you instead of the wishing. When your time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. When your time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective in life. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective in life. Doubters all the night, and onto them you shine bright. Cause inside your head, on goes the light. Doubters all the night, and onto them you shine bright.
Marcus Messiah Garvey was the founder and organizer of the largest independent black movement in the world, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League. At the heights of success, the organization had a membership of over 11 million subscribed members. This was an excellent feat, especially when we consider that this happened during a time of no internet, no smartphones, no social media, and in the midst of 2 world wars, making it very difficult for domestic and international communications to even take place. Yet he dared to travel the world, even to non-English speaking regions, spreading his message of self-love and empowerment. This was during a time when it was particularly dangerous for black men and women to wander outside of their own homes. But these factors did not stop the man and the movement, for he had at his disposal an unmatched confidence. He did not fear failure, and he did not care about the laughter and the ridicule thrown his way, for he had a fearless passion for the advancement of black people worldwide that fueled his efforts. This is program 4 of our series. Today's talk was originally delivered 102 years ago by the founder and president of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League of Jamaica. Marcus Messiah Garvey had just completed a tour of the United States. He's about to deliver a speech that would cement his legacy in America as a race leader. He speaks about the worst cases of labor related to violence in the 20th century. This is all American history, and one of the worst race riots in US history to date. In 1917, white workers, angered over black migration and job distributions, attacked, beat, burnt, lynched just shy of 200 black people. African Americans who had moved to the city from the South in search of employment and a better life. Their homes were burnt down and over 6,000 black people were left homeless. Race leaders at the time, however, well, they was afraid to address the issue. But Marcus decided to take things into his own hands. We join him in New York on a Sunday afternoon on the 8th of July 1917 before a large enthusiastic gathering of Negro Americans and West Indians, at which police captain of the borough attended, along with detectives, police lieutenants, and Secret Servicemen. The meeting was presided over by Mr. Chandler Owen, the editor of the Hotel Messenger. It is entitled The Conspiracy of the East St. Louis Riots. Today's narration is by Brother Andrew X from Birmingham, UK.
You are listening to an Honor Level production featuring the Resurrection of Marcus Messiah Garvey series.
The 1917 race riots, which occurred in East St. Louis, are one of those absolutely tragic, horrible, awful events that continue, I think, to compound our history.
And to this day, they are still considered the worst race riots the nation has ever seen.
They started with a strike at a company called the Aluminum Ore Company. And it was strikes by primarily white workers, but the company began to hire African Americans as replacement workers.
Tensions between whites and blacks in East St. Louis had been growing even before the strike, as more and more African Americans migrated north looking for work. But on the evening of July 2nd, it boiled over. Mobs began setting fire to African American homes. There were random shootings and beatings. Even women participated in the attacks.
Hundreds of people died, depending on whose accounts you look at, but several hundred at least, mostly African American.
The end of the riots brought the beginning of several investigations, with perhaps the most shocking revelation that some of the militiamen brought in to restore peace actually participated in the attacks. Outrage spread across the country. 3 weeks after the end of the riots, 10,000 African Americans marched down New York City's Fifth Avenue in silent protest.
It's a set of events that are remembered well by African American residents of the region because the tradition has been passed down, and something that most white people would rather forget and have.
The East St. Louis riot, or rather massacre of Monday, July the 2nd, will go down in history as one of the bloodiest outrages against mankind for which any class of people could be held guilty. This is no time for fine words, but a time to lift one's voice against the savagery of a people who claim to be the dispensers of democracy. I do not know what special meaning the people who slaughtered the Negroes of East St. Louis have for democracy, of which they are the custodians, but I do know that it has no literal meaning for me as used and applied by these same lawless people. America, that has been ringing the bells of the world, proclaiming to the nations and the peoples thereof that she has democracy to give to all and sundry. America, that has denounced Germany for the deportations of the Belgians into Germany. America, that has arraigned Turkey at the bar of public opinion and public justice against the massacres of the Armenians, has herself no satisfaction to give 12 million of her own citizens except the satisfaction of a farcical inquiry that will end where it began, over the brutal murder of men, women and children for no other reason than they are black people seeking an industrial chance in a country that they have labored for 300 years to make great. For 300 years, the Negroes of America have given their lifeblood to make the Republic the first among the nations of the world. And all along this time, there's never been even 1 year of justice, but on the contrary, a continuous round of oppression. At one time, it was slavery. At another time, lynching and burning, and up to date, it is wholesale butchering. This is a crime against the laws of humanity. It is a crime against the laws of the nation. It is a crime against nature and a crime against the God of all mankind. Somewhere in the book of life, we are told that God created of one blood all nations of men to dwell on the face of earth. And after mankind in scattered groups had for thousands of years lived in their own spheres without trouble or molestation, promoting in their own way the course of peace and happiness, the white race, a party of this group, went out to enslave, conquer, and rob the rights of the peaceful. Through that system of enslavement, conquest, and robbery, the black man was taken into this country where he was forced against his will to labor for the enrichment of the white man. Millions of our people in the early days of slavery gave their lives that America might live. From the labors of these people, the country grew in power until her wealth today is computed above that of any two nations. With all the service that the Negro gave, he is still a despised creature in the eye of the white people, For if he were not to them despise, the 90 million of whites of this country would never allow such outrages as the East St. Louis massacre to perpetuate themselves without enforcing the law which provides justice for every man, be he black or white. The black man has always trusted the white man. He has always clung to him as a brother man, ever willing to do service for him, to help him, to succor him. Yet with all this, the white man has never found it convenient to live up to the principles of brotherhood, which he himself teaches to all mankind. From the time of Livingstone to the present day, the black man has always been kind to the white man. When there was no white man in Africa to help the sickly and dying Livingstone, the black man, ever true, even as Simon the Cyrenian was true, in bearing the cross of the despised Jesus, came to the rescue of the suffering Englishman. And when he was dead, faithful as they were, they bore his body for hundreds of miles across the desert and plains of Africa until they deposited his remains at a place where other white men could reach him to convey him to England and inter his bones in the Cathedral of Westminster Abbey. From the time of Crispus Attucks at Boston, the 10th Cavalry at St. Johan Hill, which saved the day for Roosevelt, up to the time when they stuck to Boyd at Carrizal, has demonstrated to the American nation that he is as true as steel. Yet for all his services, he receives the reward of lynching, burning, and wholesale slaughter. It is even strange to see how the real American white people, the people who are direct descendants from the Pilgrim Fathers, allow the alien German, Pole, Italian, and other Europeans who came here but yesterday to lead them in the bloody onslaught against the Negroes who have lived here for over 300 years. When I say that the aliens are leading the descendants of the Pilgrim Fathers against the Negroes in this country, I mean to support it with as much facts as possible. Mayor Mormon of East St. Louis, if not himself a German, is a descendant of German immigrants. He is the man to be blamed for the recent riots in East St. Louis. I say so because I'm convinced that he fostered a well-arranged conspiracy to prevent black men migrating from the South, much to the loss of Southern farmers who for months have been moving heaven itself to prevent the exodus of the labor serfs of the South into the North. 2 months ago, I was in New Orleans completing a lecture tour of the United States, and on the 26th of April, Mayor Fred W. Mormon arrived in the city on a trip from St. Louis. In New Orleans, he was met by Mayor Berman and the New Orleans Board of Trade. For months, the farmers of Louisiana were frightened out of their wits over the everyday migration of Negroes from great farming centers of the state. They wrote to the papers. They appealed to the governor, the mayor, and the legislator, and the Board of Trade to stop the Negroes going away. But up to the 26th of April, nothing was done to stop the people, excepting the railway companies promising to use certain restraint on the rush of people obtaining passages on the trains by railway orders sent to them from the north. At this time, Mayor Mormon arrived, and the farmers and Board of Trade met him and asked his help in discouraging the Negroes from going north, and especially to East St. Louis. In an interview given out to the New Orleans press, he said that the Negroes from the South were reaching St. Louis at the rate of 2,000 per week, and that they were creating a problem there. He said that some of the largest industries in the country were established in East St. Louis, and there were strikes for the last few months. He believed the labor conditions in East St. Louis were responsible for the number of Negro laborers going to that city. When the strike started, he said, the United States District Judge Wright issued an injunction restraining the strikers from intimidating the laborers who took their places. This order prevented uprisings and riots. Quote, conditions are very bad in East St. Louis, close quote, he said. Quote, because many plants are suffering for the want of labor. However, our city is growing and we have a population of 85,000 persons. During 1916, we gained 1,600 in population, close quote. His interview did not make pleasant reading for the farmers. and others interested in labor in New Orleans and Louisiana, so that the very next day he appeared at the Board of Trade, where he met the farmers and others, and in discussing the labor exodus with them, he promised that he would do all he could to discourage Negroes from Louisiana going into East St. Louis, as the city did not want them. His interview on the first day was an encouragement to the Negroes to go to East St. Louis, as there was work for them, owing to the inability of the various plants to get labor. On the second day when he was approached, he said East St. Louis did not want the Negroes, and he then promised to do all in his power to prevent them going there. His remarks to the people whom he met were published under big headlines in the newspapers, so that the Negroes could read that they were not wanted in East St. Louis, but that did not deter the black men of Louisiana who were looking for better opportunities in the land of their birth, going about the country looking for better conditions than the South offered, with lynching and Jim Crowism. The Negroes still continued their migration north. The mayor of East St. Louis returned to the city after making his promise to the Farmers' Board of Trade and others who were interested in Negro labor. On the 5th of May, the New Orleans Board of Trade elected Mr. M.J. Sanders as president and Mr. W.P. Ross as delegates to attend a transportation conference at St. Louis to be held on May the 8th and 9th. You will remember that Mayor Mormon appeared before the Board of Trade on Friday the 27th of April, where he made the statement of promise. The transportation conference was held at St. Louis on the 8th and 9th of May, at which several prominent men interested in the labor condition of the South were present, as also Messrs. Sanders and Ross from New Orleans. It isn't for me to suggest that Mayor Mormon met these gentlemen again. It is for you to imagine what further transpired while these gentlemen from the South, who were so deeply interested in keeping the Negro below the Mason and Dixon line, said and did among themselves while in that vicinity where Mayor Mormon held sway, so much so as to be able to make a promise to keep out citizens of the United States who were not born in Germany, but in the Southland. One thing I do know, the first riots started on May the 28th, after a conference of labor leaders with Mayor Mormon. And on that day, May 28th, crowds of white men, after leaving the city council, stopped streetcars and dragged Negroes off and beat them. Then the night following, 3 Negroes and 2 white men were shot. An investigation of the affair resulted in the finding that labor agents had induced Negroes to come from the South. I can hardly see the relevance of such a report with the dragging of men from cars and shooting them. The city authorities did nothing to demonstrate to the unreasonable labor leaders that they would be firmly dealt with should they maltreat and kill black men. No threat was offered to these men because Mayor Mormon himself had promised to do all he could to drive the Negroes out of East St. Louis and to instill fear in the hearts of the people in the South so as to prevent them coming north. On the 29th of May, a day after the first disturbance, and when 3 Negro men had been killed, Mayor Mormon sent a dispatch to Governor Pleasant of Louisiana advising the Negroes of Louisiana to remain away from East St. Louis. This news item from the call of May the 31st, which I will read, will speak for itself. So Negroes asked to stay away. Quote, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, May the 30th, an order advising all Louisiana Negroes to remain away from East St. Louis was issued today by Governor Pleasant, following a request from Mayor Mormon of the Illinois city, close quote. I have not seen the Louisiana papers that published that order, but you can imagine for yourselves how the papers made prominent news of it, so as to bring home to the Negroes of the state the very discouraging situation which the mayor of East St. Louis helped to create. Because nothing was done to crush the originators and leaders of the first riot, the Negro haters of East St. Louis took fresh courage and made their final attack on our defenseless men, women, and children on Monday, July the 2nd, which resulted in the wholesale massacre of our people. When we read in the white press a report like what I will read to you, we can conjure to our own minds the horror of the whole affair. Quote, East St. Louis, July the 2nd, Negroes are being shot down like rabbits and strung up to telegraph poles. Quote, the official police estimate at 9 o'clock put the number of dead at 100. They reached this total partly through reports that many victims have been pursued into creeks and shot, burned in buildings or murdered and thrown into the Mississippi. Exact number of dead will probably never be known. 6 Negroes were hanged to telegraph poles in the south end of town. A reliable white man reports having counted 90 Negro corpses on a side street. Quote, a reign of terror prevails. The police and the 2 companies of National Guard are powerless. The companies of soldiers were powerless as they had orders not to shoot. The whites took their rifles from them, telling them they might hurt someone, whilst these very whites took the rifles and shot Negroes, close quote. The whole thing, my friends, is a bloody farce. And that the police and soldiers did nothing to stem the murder thirst of the mob is a conclusive proof of conspiracy on the part of the civil authorities to condone the acts of the white mob against Negroes.
Peace, quiet, and good order will be maintained in our city to the best of our ability. Riots, melees, and disturbances of the peace are against the interest of all our people, and therefore cannot be permitted.
The jury found that they were all not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
What disturbs me so often in my imagination are the smiles of the mob as they surround a woman getting off a trolley car, and the women attack her with their fingers and with instruments of torture, and they maim her to the point where she is almost lifeless, and they stand there laughing and joking about her body on the street.
An 80-year-old man was dragged off the trolley and beaten in front of, beaten to death in front of hundreds of people who were watching, some cheering him on.
The same thing was true for another family, mother and child, who were pulled off a trolley car, and men and women both took the children and the mother and killed them in broad daylight.
The single image that's always stuck in my mind was the image of white killers hauling a black man through the main street of downtown in East St. Louis.
His skull was injured and he was bleeding profusely, and they to get the rope around his neck, and they reached into the blood and just grabbed this man to hoist him up and hang him to finish the murder that they had started.
They threw the rope over the streetlight, and a gang of whites pulled at the rope until the man was hanged to death. And then he was left hanging from the streetlight for hours and hours.
In this report, we further read that as the flames of fire would drive a Negro man, woman, or child from a dwelling, their clothes burning, the mob would set up a great shout, and rifles and pistols would be fired. So far, no Negro was known to escape, as the whites had a merciless net about the Negroes, and the cry was, "Kill 'em all!" Negro faces were seen at frames of windows, and when they saw what happened to those who flew from the burning structures, they dropped back into the fire, rather than tempt a similar fate. An example of what the guardsmen encountered and themselves enjoined was the beating of colored women by white girls. This sort of thing was common. It resulted in the death of several Negro women. 6 girls, according to the report, pursued a colored girl around the main railway station. A mob formed behind the girls who were screaming frantic epithets at the terrified black girl. "Send them back to Africa. Kill them all! Lynch them! Shouted the young white Amazons. Suddenly the crowd swept from the trail of the girl. A yell then arose. There is one! It was a Negro walking on the railroad track. Before he realized his peril, he was killed. Half a dozen pistols cracked and the man dropped without a chance to run. Two white girls, neither more than 17 years old, the report said, were cheered when they dragged a colored girl from a streetcar, removed her slippers, and beat her senseless with the sharp wooden heels. Some reports said black women were stripped by white women for the amusement of the crowd. The mob, an entire white populace of East St. Louis, had a Roman holiday. They feasted on the blood of the Negro, encouraged as they were by the German-American mayor who 2 months ago went to New Orleans and promised to keep the Negroes out of East St. Louis. That this man did absolutely nothing to let the people know that the law would be enforced to preserve order and ensure the peaceful lives of the black people is amply demonstrated by a report which comes from East St. Louis and was published in the New York Tribune of Saturday, July the 7th. Under the caption, "Citizens blame long reign of lawlessness for riots," the paper published this bit of news. East St. Louis, July the 6th, resignation of Chief of Police Payne of East St. Louis and of Cornelius Hickey, Knight, Chief of Police, or of radical reforms will be demanded of Mayor Molman by the Citizens Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. This determination is a result of the race riots here, Monday, in which 37 persons lost their lives. Morris Joyce, Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, declared today, the rioting was the direct result of the long reign of lawlessness in East St. Louis. We have a police department that is incompetent and, if not worse. Not only was the word sent out that law would not be rigidly enforced, but the impression was allowed to spread that law violations would be winked at, close quote. This gallant vice chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, who knew this even before one Negro was shot, never said a word and did nothing to bring the delinquent mayor who ruled the city to a realization of these facts until great property damage was done to the Southern Railway Company when their warehouse of over 100 carloads of merchandise was consumed by the flames, causing a loss to the company of over $500,000, and a white theatre of over $100,000 was destroyed. It was not until property was destroyed, in which the Chamber of Commerce was most interested, that the officers of that body let the mayor know that he must do his duty. It was not through overpopulation or through scarcity of work why East St. Louis did not want Negroes. It was simply because they were black. For Mayor Molman himself said months ago that East St. Louis was badly off for laborers, as many of the plants could not get hands to operate them. I can hardly see why black men should be debarred from going where they choose in the land of their birth. I cannot see where from Mayor Molman got the authority to discourage black men going into East St. Louis when there was work for them, except he got that authority from mob sentiment and mob law. It was because he knew that he could gain a following and support on the issue of race why he was bold enough to promise the white people of Louisiana that he would keep Negroes out of East St. Louis. He has succeeded in driving fully 10,000 in one day out of the city. And the South has gone wild over the splendid performance, in so much so that the very next day after the massacre, the legislature of Georgia sent out the message that their good Negroes must come home, as they will treat them better than East St. Louis did. Can you wonder at the conspiracy of the whole affair? White people are taking advantage of black men today because black men all over the world are disunited.
time comes, don't postpone it. When others down and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective.